When Microsoft first announced Game Pass, I think a lot of people within the video game space were thinking, hey, it's only Microsoft, what can they do? They're not on the level of Sony, they can't even sell that many consoles. And lo and behold, Game Pass turned out to be a runaway success. Game Pass Ultimate has been added to the whole thing, which allows you to play Game Pass on PC and on Xbox consoles. And now you've got all sorts of things added on and built around Game Pass. And Sony continued to have no answer, while Nintendo continued to do whatever they do in their eShop. We don't talk about it. What happens in the eShop stays in the eShop. Anyway, it looks like this rivalry between Microsoft and Sony is only going to get muddier and murkier because Sony have added a new weapon to their arsenal. Hi, I'm Rob and welcome to Gossip News, and as you've probably already figured out, the news that's on everyone's minds and lips this week is that Sony have merged PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus to create their 3-tier subscription service, which is their rival to Game Pass. Now, this subscription service is going to include PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation Portable, PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, but it won't include brand new releases and, for some reason, Vita games. What's that all about? Why won't you include Vita games? Do you hate that console that much, Sony? I mean, seriously, the Vita was an amazing console. You should have given it more love. Maybe then you might have a share of the handheld market. Anyway, this new Game Pass rival is going to be separated into 3 tiers. The base tier is PS Plus Essentials, and that's basically the original PS Plus service. It includes 2 monthly downloadable games, and that is going to be on sale in the UK for £6.99 a month. PS Plus Extra includes all of the PS Plus Essentials stuff, but adds a collection of 400 PS4 and PS3 games that can be downloaded. These games are going to include the likes of Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales, God of War, Returnal, those sorts of things. And I think that's probably the level that a lot of people will go for, because that one is priced at $10.99 a month. So that seems more like a viable rival to Game Pass. A lot more so than PS Plus Essentials. Then you've got the highest tier, which is PS Plus Premium, which includes all of PS Plus Extra and PS Plus Essentials, but it also adds classic games from the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 and PSP, which can be downloaded or streamed, time-limited game trials, and PS3 and PS4 game streaming. That service is going to cost £13.49 a month. So, again, still competitive with Game Pass, but we'll see how it all goes. See, there are certain fundamental things that I think are going to hamper Sony's approach a little bit, some of which we'll talk about on this episode in a bit. But for now, I'm really glad that Sony are finally off the mark with a subscription service that works for them. And in case you're wondering, I will probably be going with PlayStation Plus Extra because I already have a massive games collection and I own a lot of PS1, PS2, PS3 and PSP games. I also have quite a few PS Vita games and a Vita to play them on, but that's not the point. The point is Sony really doesn't like the Vita, and this is kind of proof positive of that. You made the damn console yourself, Sony. You made the decisions. You could have had a share of the handheld market if you did a PS Vita too. Just saying. Anyway, following on from that, the CEO of PlayStation, Jim Ryan, did an interview with GamesIndustry.biz. Now, I wouldn't say that the interview was particularly in-depth, but it does give you a nice little overview of how he and the other executives at PlayStation are thinking and how they perceive the coming future for video games. I will say there were certain bits of the interview, when I was reading it, that made me go, what? And other bits that made me go, huh? And other bits that made me laugh. The interview itself is worth a read if you're into the business side of video games, especially. A couple of the bits that made me kind of scratch my head and maybe even chuckle a little. The first is that Jim Ryan believes that live service games will dominate over subscription games. Which, I hate to say it to you, Jim, that's already happened. That ship has sailed. We now live in a world dominated by live service games. Also, while we're on the subject, can anyone actually explain to me what the difference is between a live service game and an MMO? a subscription-based MMO for that. What's the difference between the two? Anyway, other things that Jim Ryan said in his interview, he also said that he was worried that if first-party games were launched on PlayStation Plus, then they would suffer. He wasn't talking about short-term, he was talking about long-term. What he said in that interview was that we feel we are in a good virtuous cycle with the studios, where the investment delivers success, which enables yet more investment, which delivers yet more success. We like that cycle, and we think our gamers like that cycle. He went on to say, putting our own games into the service, or any of our services, upon their release, as you well know, this is not a road that we've gone down in the past, and it's not a road that we're going to go down with this new service. We feel if we were to do that with the games that we make at PlayStation Studios, that virtuous cycle will be broken. The level of investment that we need to make in our studios would not be possible, and we think the knock-on effect on the quality of the games that we make would not be something that gamers want. Fine. All well and good, Jim. Totally understand from the financial side of things, that is a valid point. But you could work with other developers, not just your first-party ones, or about day one releases from third-party developers. Hell, what about day one releases from indie devs who really could do with the exposure and have seen their games actually increase in profitability while they've been available on Game Pass? That's not a lie either. So, what's the critical consensus on this? Well, most people seem to be happy that Sony is finally joining the party when it comes to subscription-based games services like Game Pass. Games Industry went and spoke to a bunch of experts from Ampere Analysis, Creative Strategies, Strategy Analytics and IDC, all of whom gave their views on Sony's proposed new subscription service and how it holds up against Microsoft's Game Pass alternative. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the entire article. I will link it in the description below because it is more business-oriented and will probably appeal more to those of you who want to know and understand how the business side of things works in the video games industry. I will just dwell on one particular aspect of it. Almost all of the analysts that Game Industry spoke to agreed that Sony doing its own version of Game Pass was a good thing. Where they seemed to be split was on the day one releases. The issue day one releases some thought was more of an issue than others, although they weren't clear on how much of an issue it was going to be for Sony. There are various approaches that Sony could take in order to compete properly with Game Pass. Personally, and this is just my sneaking suspicion, Sony wanting to focus on live service games, I think they want something that is going to compete with Fortnite. And if they can get something that competes with Fortnite, then they will use that as a marketing platform. Because people will already be playing that and they can market any new first-party game within that framework. Just like how DC and Marvel and various others use Fortnite as a marketing tool. Effectively, it is a great marketing tool and people do buy into it because they get to play as these characters. Sony might be looking at it that way, and if they are, then, fair play to them. Because what Epic Games have done with Fortnite and turned it into just a giant advertising board that you can play, it's kind of genius. Okay, we've talked about Sony's attempt at Game Pass. Let's talk about the real thing. Phil Spencer was talking at GDC recently in their fireside chat, and he was asked specifically about retail games, physical copies of games. When Phil was speaking with Sarah Bond, who is a fellow Xbox executive, Phil said, "I often get asked by developers, if I'm not in the subscription, am I just not viable on Xbox anymore? It's absolutely not true." He goes on to clarify, "We look at retail, people selling games, buying games, it's an important part of our profit and loss." That said, Sarah Bond did state that the Xbox team is always stunned by just how well its Game Pass subscription does. "We look at this data over and over again. Consistently, the engagement in a game when it goes into subscription goes up 8 times above where it was before, and members actually spend 50% more. It's really lowered the barrier for entry and created a whole new market and love for games and gaming experiences that otherwise wouldn't have existed." Which is the main thing that I use Game Pass for. I use Game Pass to explore new and interesting experiences and indie games. I don't really use it for the AAA stuff. And you know what? I play more games now than I have done in a long, long time. And I was in danger of falling out of love with games. I was in danger of just hanging up my controller and walking away and doing something else because I was so angry and annoyed at the state of games right now and how generic third-person action-adventure insert title here games had gotten. And so many games being copies of other games and copies of other games. I can handle that when you've got a good narrative side to it and various other things, but I don't like it when you're forcing me to pay £40, £50 for that, and all you're doing is promising me the earth and giving me just more fetch quests, or more third-person over-the-shoulder camera, run about, do this, shoot that, do this, fetch that, do this. That's not really a game. It's more like work. Anyway, Spencer added that he's incredibly proud of the role that Game Pass has been able to play not only in Xbox's first big party games, but in the indie games and the great games that people are playing. Fair enough. Where things go a little bit awry, maybe I should say, and potentially a kick in the balls for Sony, is in the rumour, the yet-to-be-confirmed, suspicious news that Microsoft is moving ahead with an Xbox Game Pass family plan. Now, this is news from Windows Central. Xbox Game Pass, we all know what that is. The family plan apparently allows you to pay one subscription for up to 5 people, and that subscription will be lower than 5 individual subscriptions. Now, that family plan lets you share access to the service among a household. Nintendo already offers a family plan, and various online services like Disney Plus and Netflix have had family plans for years. If this is true and Xbox are offering a family plan for Game Pass, and it works the way that we all think it's going to work, then this is potentially a kick in the balls, a massive, swift kick in the balls for Sony. Because Sony will be the only one that doesn't offer a family plan for whatever reason. And if Microsoft are going to do this, then I can see a lot of student houses taking up Xbox Game Pass rather than Sony's PlayStation offering. It would make so much more sense. Imagine the scenario. You're a student, you've got several housemates, you all want to play games, you're all trying to decide which console you're going to get or whether you're going to play them on PC. Game Pass is attractive, but some of you are Sony fans. But then you learn about the Xbox family plan for Game Pass. And you think, hang on, we can all have Game Pass Ultimate for this price rather than paying for it individually and paying way more individually. So we get it as a group thing. We get a group discount on the whole thing. Everyone can have Game Pass Ultimate. And you know what the great thing about Game Pass Ultimate is? You have game streaming built into it, so you don't even need to buy a brand new console. You can just go and buy a cheap and crappy Xbox One from a second-hand shop and use that. Now tell me students aren't going to be attracted by that. And when you get right down to it, students are one of the primary target markets for Sony. We're going to leave the rivalry on the subscription services to one side and move on to EA, who have reportedly trademarked 2 titles, EA Sports Football Club and EA Sports FC. According to Geoff Grubb, these are the names of the new football game that EA is going to make after 2022, when, to all intents and purposes, EA may lose the FIFA license, because that's still up in the air. There are people at EA who feel that the FIFA license has held them back from making the football game that they want to make, which I kind of understand. You want the creative freedom, everything like that. But the FIFA license has brought you billions in terms of revenue because it is FIFA. It is official. There is nothing better than the official thing. And if you lose the FIFA license, well, we'll see how successful you are with your football then. Because I will be honest, I don't understand why FIFA has been licensing the whole thing to EA for such a long period of time, when it would have been much easier for FIFA to make their own game studio and make their own game. Hell, they could still do that. It would make more sense. Anyway, moving on to our final story. E3 is officially cancelled for 2022. The digital and physical events both have been called off. The physical one was already called off, but the digital one, everyone was kind of thinking, yeah, it'll still run ahead. But it's been cancelled. The ESA have confirmed this. Geoff Keighley's Summer Games Fest is actually going to continue, and that starts in June. Now, for those of you who aren't aware what Summer Games Fest is, Geoff Keighley and a few other people got together and started Summer Games Fest in 2020 when E3 was cancelled, and they were getting really frustrated at just how the whole thing with E3 was going. Basically, a lot of how E3 is now as a big trade show was pissing them off, and they made their own thing. Fair play to them. Summer Games Fest has actually been more interesting than E3 for a lot of things. But this begs the question, because they're saying E3 is going to come back next year. The ESA really want E3 to be back. It's the jewel in their crown for video games. But is it worth it? Is it an actual jewel, or is it just a piece of cut glass at this point? Anyway, I'll leave that thought in your heads. If you have any opinions on any of the things we've talked about on today's episode, then leave us a comment below. I'll be back again next time on Impossible Mission or Gosu News. Until then, thanks for watching.